Hello and welcome to yet another video. This is the second episode in which Naruto is physically too strong. There's something to say about being overly strong. When you have the ability to do whatever you want, you realize that you don't actually want to do anything. Please like and subscribe to show your support. Let's get the show started. You know, the old landlady chirped. You really don't belong here. Naruto, for the third time that day, shrugged. His landlady had said that to him numerous times throughout the day and would not stop repeating it until he responded. Instead of dignifying a conversation, the boy shrugged and got back to doing his job for the day, cleaning the gutters of his own apartment building. I don't mean here, the lady said, gesturing to the apartment building. I mean here, as in doing this. You're far too skilled. You're more than overqualified. Once again Naruto shrugged. Using a new technique his Jonin teacher of the week taught him, Naruto coated his hand with chakra. A thin film of the stuff coated his hand, and Naruto attempted to use the now gloved appendage to sweep the gunk out of the gutters. As soon as he tried, however, he lost focus. The light coating of spiritual and physical energy dissipated from his hand, leaving him to touch the mud and leaves with his bare skin. "Ew," Naruto said. His face scrunched up as the landlady smiled. "I knew you could talk," she said, her mirth evident from the chuckle that escaped her lips. "You should do it more often. You're far too young to have run out of words." Naruto considered shrugging once more but thought better of it. Instead he wiped the gunk off his hand and onto his pants. He leaned back from his perch on the wall and stared at his neighbor. "No." The old lady chuckled. "And why not?" "Because," Naruto said, his voice soft and barely audible. Only years of listening for the slightest noise allowed the retired ninja to hear the boy. "I don't want to." "Ah," the landlady said, an air of knowing in her voice. "Then what do you want to do?" Naruto seemed to take a moment. The chakra, which he had tried to reapply, dissipated from his hand once more as the boy seemingly stared off into the distance. After a while the boy seemed to snap out of his reverie with a shake of his head. He leaned back from the wall again and stared at his landlady. "I want to get stronger." The landlady lost her smirk almost immediately. With a hum, the old ninja hobbled back into her house and retrieved a white envelope. With a huff, she tossed it out into the open air, and watched as the boy detached himself from the building wall to chase after it. With all the grace of a brick, the boy shot through the air and caught the envelope, before falling to the ground and landing unharmed. "There's the payment for the dranked mission, brat." The landlady leaned on her windowsill as she stared imperiously down at the orange-wearing boy. "It'll get split when you report in, but I ask that you get a good cut. I know the old monkey. He'll give you some spending money." Naruto, instead of thanking her, simply looked back to the gutters. The landlady huffed. "Don't worry about that. I sent in the mission as an excuse to talk to you anyway. If I wanted the gutters cleaned, they'd be clean." Naruto raised a perfectly blonde eyebrow in response. The landlady rolled her eyes. She ran through hand seals faster than Naruto could discern. Earth technique, cleaning out the gutters. Immediately all of the gunk in the gutters jumped out and floated as if possessed. Naruto would have whistled at the feat, if not for the mischievous grin on the old lady's face. "Get going, boy," the landlady grunted. As if those words were the command, the gunk seemed to tense, before flying at the blonde boy. Naruto dodged the first volley easily enough, but the next came in increasing speed. Before long, Naruto had to flee, the gunk following him as if on a mission. The landlady looked after the boy wistfully. Once he was effectively out of her sight, the old lady turned and hobbled back into her room. "So you're looking to get stronger, brat?" The landlady rubbed at her bad leg, a habit that was almost instinctual at this point. "Don't we all?" XXX Naruto stepped into the room of the Hokage, his bright blue eyes taking in everything around him. The Hokage, as usual, sat rather leisurely behind his desk, but prior knowledge clued Naruto into the fact that the man was anything but relaxed. "Ah," the old man said. He looked up from a piece of paper he was examining to eye the young blonde as he made his way into the room. "I see you are done with the mission. Were you given your pay?" Naruto nodded, before walking forward and placing the envelope on the desk. The third Hokage opened it and leafed through its contents, before landing on a note that was included alongside the pay. The Hokage read it quickly, allowing first a scowl, then a small smile to grace his face. "Your client is rather manipulative. She intends to have me give you the full pay." Naruto nodded. It made sense. He did, after all, do the full work. Sort of. Mostly. However, that is not how it works. If the village is to have any capital, we need to tax our people for their services. It is customary for us to take a majority percentage of the pay, but since this is a low-ranked mission and I know the client, The Hokage continued to take a small pile of coins off the top of the payment. "I think I can excuse it, this one time. Take your payment and be gone, Shinan Uzumaki." Naruto nodded, then walked forward and took the money left for him on the desk. He made to count it, but then suddenly decided that such a thing wasn't necessary. Instead, the boy shoved the money into his pocket and made for the door. As his hand reached for the handle, however, the door was shoved open. Unfortunately for whoever was on the other side, Naruto stood barring the entry to the room. The door stopped immediately upon hitting Naruto, even it knowing an unstoppable force when meeting it. Naruto stood unperturbed by the occurrence, even though whoever it was on the other side very clearly collapsed from the unexpected run-in with a suddenly immovable door. The blonde looked around, uncertain of what he had to do, and eventually let his eyes fall on his leader. The Hokage sighed. "Just let whoever that is in." Naruto nodded and stepped to the side. The door, warily this time, opened and allowed in the rather disheveled Chunin. "What the hell was that?" The boy, just barely into his teens, mumbled. He shook off his disorientation soon enough and looked to his leader. "Never mind that. Lord Hokage. There is grave news from Team Kakashi." The Hokage snorted. "Don't you mean Team 7? He insisted that I call it otherwise, sir." "Very well," the Hokage allowed, knowing that while Kakashi was childish, the man was also stubborn and easily one of the best soldiers at his command. He would allow such frivolity. "What is this grave news?" "It appears that Jonin Kakashi and his pack of Jinan have run into enemy missing ninja while on their trip. He is requesting backup." The Hokage sighed, then rubbed the bridge of his nose. Why didn't he abandon the mission and return, should that have been the case? The Chunin looked away, then started rubbing the back of his neck. He, included that in his SOS. He said that, and I quote, "his cute little Jinan were too hard to refuse." The Hokage sighed. "Of course he did. Very well, I will endeavor to send him some reinforcements." And the Hokage then proceeded to do so, before he realized something. He didn't have to call for anyone if the strongest, and cheapest paid, member of his forces was in this very room. Jinan Uzumaki, the third called. Like a good soldier, Naruto answered, albeit clumsily. His salute was a little lax. The Hokage didn't mind. "You are to travel to the Land of Waves and assist Jonin Hatake and his squad in whatever little trouble they find themselves in. As per usual, you are freelance, but for the duration of the rest of their trip you are to answer to Kakashi Hatake. Is that understood?" Naruto nodded. "Then make speed, Naruto," the third said with what he hoped was fondness in his voice. He hadn't been able to connect with the boy as much as he had wanted to, but he hoped there was still some sort of connection there between himself and the boy. That hope was answered when Naruto smiled back. It was a tiny, almost imperceptible thing, but the boy smiled regardless. "Of course, Gramps," the boy said, before turning and making his way out of the room. He was gone before long, leaving the Hokage alone in his office with the confused Chunin who had notified him and really far too much paperwork. The Hokage was prepared to dismiss the boy and go about his work again when a small quake from outside the tower he resided in interrupted that. "What the Chunin asked?" The third held up a hand. "That was Naruto," the elder said, his voice weary. "He's on his way to Wave." "Oh," the Chunin responded, clearly surprised. "I guess that's it, then." The two went silent, letting the sentence and its implications sit in the air. It was the Chunin who broke it. "I'm surprised he knows the way to Wave." Silence reigned once more. The Hokage put a hand to his head. Shit. Triple X going out of the village for the first time was supposed to be a magnificent adventure. Naruto could just feel it. Where the village was boring and stagnant and filled with disapproving looks, the world outside was to be amazing. Princesses and evil warlords, power-hungry mad scientists and evil cults. All of that and more was supposed to be awaiting him the instant he stepped out of the village. What he was met with, however, was more of the same. "Kidnapped princesses?" a man asked while half leaning on an old gardening tool. "You realize that we're a farming village, right? We don't have any princesses here. If you want that, you're going to have to head to the fire capital." After asking and being assured that no, there weren't any missing villagers to be found, Naruto reluctantly made his way to the fire capital. "Princess? Why would we allow you to see the princess?" a royal guard asked Naruto. The boy, who was currently standing unperturbed even though there were 3 different guards trying to move him, just shrugged in response. "She's fine and doesn't need saving. Now shoo. Go about your day." Naruto did just that. He went about his day and stumbled into Rice Country. "Mad scientists?" a bespectacled young man asked. He adjusted his glasses nervously, his eyes roaming everywhere but the honest blue eyes of the young man. None of that here. I assure you. Naruto stared at the man. His gaze pierced through to the man's very soul. I assure you on my name that Lord Orochimaru isn't here. Naruto shrugged. He had no idea who this Orochimaru was, but he didn't seem like an evil scientist. Bidding the young man a good day, much to said young man's relief, Naruto took off again. Surprisingly, he did find a cult. Lord Janshin demands your blood. A silver-haired man yelled. He hefted a mighty fine scythe above his head. Just a single blade of the weapon was bigger than Naruto, and each of the scythe's 3 blades was tinted the color of blood. Speaking of which, Naruto wasn't sure of the last time that he saw his own blood. Giving a half-hearted shrug, the boy held out his arm and prepared for the swing. At least it would be interesting. Ask for directions when you're done, the fox sighed. You've been roaming far too much. Naruto snorted. He wasn't roaming, he was just hitting up places on his way to Wave. Wherever Wave was. XXX Sasuke cursed, or tried to, as he ducked under yet another volley of ice needles. Scarlet eyes darted around the battlefield, trying to take in everything they could, before their owner reacted. New to the Sharingan, Sasuke was quickly realizing that he wasn't nearly fast enough to react to the things that he could see. And that was a problem. Stand still, you freak, Sasuke yelled. With practiced ease, the raven-haired boy pulled a knife out of a holster on his leg. With a twirl, he swiped upwards, deflecting several ice shards that were aimed for him. That would appear unwise, his opponent answered. The masked boy, or girl as they were wearing a kimono, then slunk back into a floating mirror of ice. It was one of many that surrounded the Uchiha, some of which were floating in the air, forming a dome of ice mirrors that had very little space in between. You will prove interference to my precious person, and for that reason, I cannot allow you to escape. The masked ninja, now reflected in every mirror, seemed to hesitate before continuing. I don't want to hurt you, the masked person said. Even through the mask, Sasuke could feel the reluctance in his opponent. But if you push the issue, I will kill my heart in order to do what I must. If you just stand down, I will let you live. Sasuke scowled. His teeth grinded against each other as he contemplated the dilemma he was currently in. Simply put, he was outmatched in every way against his opponent. They were faster, stronger, and simply better than he was. He had unlocked the Sharingan after so many years of trying and still, it just wasn't enough. It was frustrating. After all this time he was no closer to Itachi than he was before. The gap between them seemed to be widening every time he thought he was shortening it. Worse still, he wasn't even getting closer to Naruto. Sasuke was under no illusions about how strong he himself was. He was the best of his generation, that's for sure, but before Itachi's progress he was behind. By this age Sasuke's murderous older brother was already a prospective Anbu. By his age Naruto, who was technically younger than him, was decimating landscapes with nary a thought. Damn it, Sasuke cursed. His empty hand twitched, and briefly he contemplated reaching for a second knife. I wouldn't recommend it, the masked ninja said, their voice echoing around the area through the multiple mirrors. You're no stronger for it. I haven't been going at full speed. You'll have twice the weapons to deflect my needles, but I'll be going at thrice the speed. Sasuke's hand stopped halfway to his holster. Now frozen there, he had no choice but to abandon that thought. Was the masked ninja telling the truth, or were they bluffing? Could they really go 3 times as fast as they were going now? He could barely keep up with them as he was. Reluctantly, Sasuke let his free hand fall. He had no other choice. He wanted to continue the fight, but he couldn't risk dying. It hurt, but he was outmatched. To lose here would mean his pride, and that was all he had left. But he couldn't avenge his clan if he were dead. Damn it! Sasuke cursed. His fist clenched around the knife in his hand. Damn it, damn it, damn it. It was so frustrating. He burned and he bled and he freaking cried to get where he was now. He did everything he could, and still it wasn't enough. There were others out there who were simply stronger than him. Some of those people were his own age. If only he was stronger. If only he were faster. This masked ninja would be a piece of cake if he had been faster. Was he not training hard enough? Was that it? That had to be it. Before, his goal of revenge was enough to keep him going. But he hadn't seen Itachi in years. His rage was still burning, but it was muted now. Colder. Some far-off dream that could be accomplished whenever. No, Sasuke remembered when he trained his heart out. Sasuke remembered when he had a tangible rival egging him on from beside him. Kiba Inuzuka was crass, and a bit of a jerk, but he always pushed himself to keep up with Sasuke. Whether it was out of sheer stubbornness or a desire to prove himself, Kiba was a worthy rival that Sasuke had to work to keep ahead of. Sasuke remembered when he had support of someone whose opinion mattered. Ino Yamanaka was a worthy ninja. She wasn't physically as strong as he or Kiba, but where she lacked in power, she made up in skill. And she fawned over him. Sure, she did it with a scathing tongue and condescending eyes, but that was what he needed. Acceptance without blind adoration. Sasuke remembered the pillar that showed him what was possible. Naruto was a bastion of hope for the young Uchiha. He was power incarnate. He was silent acceptance. He was an enduring rival to pursue. They were all friends. They were all taken away from him as he was put on a team with the silent boy and the pink-haired one. Damn it, Sasuke cursed again, his prized eyes closing in an attempt to stave off his frustration. Damn it all. Where are you guys when I need you? If only he had them. I can't get what I want like this. Is this as far as I go? If only he were stronger. Damn it, where are you guys? If only he were faster, damn it. Sasuke choked out. Where are you, Naruto? This was where Sasuke had decided. Dying here was better than never being able to face his brother. He would die anyway with his lackluster skills, so why not go out with the one thing he had left? His pride on his sleeve, Sasuke reached for his second knife anyway, spinning all the while to attempt to keep an eye on his opponent. You fool, the masked ninja hissed. They darted from mirror to mirror, throwing ice needles while they moved at supersonic speeds. Sasuke managed to deflect some, but quite a few embedded themselves in the boy's skin before he even retrieved his second weapon. You will die here, the masked ninja hissed. Each of the reflections raised a hand, revealing a fistful of needles. Perhaps, Sasuke responded, a bloody smirk on his face. But at least I died with honor. Is that it? Is your honor worth your life? The masked ninja sounded genuinely confused. It made Sasuke smile all the harder. For me? Sasuke asked. Definitely. Pride is all a man has, after all. Sasuke then smirked even harder somehow. But at least I know you're definitely a woman now. This seemed to bristle the masked ninja. 2 needles dug into Sasuke's knees before he could even react, felling Sasuke to the ground. What? I told you, the masked ninja said. I wasn't even going at a third of my speed. The masked ninja looked away. It was weird as the action was reflected in each mirror. Though it is regrettable, I'm going to have to take you out. Please, forgive me. This time, Sasuke could see them. Needles seemed to pour out of the mirrors. Unlike before, however, where they came out one at a time at extremely fast speeds. This time they seemed to come from all around him, all at once. Sasuke closed his eyes. There was no deflecting this. Triple X Kakashi grunted. He was forced back by Zabuza once more. Where Kakashi had technique and skill galore, the man in front of him was pure strength. Zabuza's sword, which was little more than an oversized cleaver, had been embedded in the stone bridge nearly halfway. Kakashi was a tall man. The sword was nearly his height. It was buried halfway into the stone bridge. Cowardice doesn't befit your name, copy ninja. Zabuza heft the sword out of the stone with one hand. He let it rest on his shoulder. Come, fight me. Kakashi scoffed. Like that was going to happen. Deep in this mist was where the rogue ninja excelled. He wasn't fighting on even ground with Zabuza so long as he was in it. Are you not coming to me? The man asked. Very well. Then I will come to you. With that, Zabuza, cloaked in all black with bandages covering his face, slowly retreated to the far end of the bridge. The mist engulfed him, and soon he was out of sight. Kakashi wasted no time. A second knife was in his hands in less than a second, and his one Sharingan darted over what limited area he could see. Heart, lungs, kidneys, Zabuza whispered from the mist. His gruff voice echoed out from just beyond sight in every direction. There are so many vital places that I could cut. How would you prefer to die today, copy ninja? Kakashi very much preferred not to die. It was with this resolve that he ducked under a horizontal slash that displaced the mist around him from sheer force alone. Your reflexes are good, Hokage, Zabuza said with a sneer. But they will dull with exhaustion. Come. Kakashi grunted as he raised both of his knives. They stopped the man's cleaver just short of hitting him, but only barely. Zabuza smiled. He had forced Kakashi to grunt from the sheer force he was pushing down. Your life will end today, just like that of your students. They don't stand a chance against Haku. He is the last of his clan, and a wielder of the rare ice release. Kakashi let himself spare a glance towards the dome of ice. For a second, he let himself feel worry, and the urge to rush over and help his students almost overwhelmed him. Doing so would expose his back to an enemy that they could not let roam free, however, and thus Kakashi squashed the urge. He was of no use to his team dead. He would just have to have trust in his students. Besides, he was sure at least Sakura was okay. "You're not the only one with an amazing blood talent on your side," Kakashi grunted. He started to push back the cleaver, albeit slowly. "I have the last of the Uchiha." Zabuza looked surprised at those words. That shock was soon gone, however, replaced by a barking laugh. "Is that so? Is that good enough, though?" Kakashi sincerely hoped it was. Triple X warm liquid splashed his face. To Sasuke's surprise, however, it wasn't his own blood. Slowly, the Uchiha opened his eyes to see, not a hail of needles, but several animals of ink surrounding him. One animal, which he couldn't make out anymore, had fallen apart and bathed a circle around him in ink. Within the goo he could see stained needles melting away. "Pretty boy," a voice called from outside the dome. "Do you need assistance?" Sasuke wanted desperately to reply with a sarcastic no, but that would probably be interpreted literally and he would be left alone. Instead, he nodded vigorously and hoped that the boy could actually help him. "Very well," Sai replied. On cue, a myriad of ink animals climbed from the sides of the bridge. Orangutans, snakes, lions, tigers and an elephant? Yeah, an elephant, launched over the railings and headed straight for the dome. The masked ninja, rather than be alarmed, simply prepared more ice needles. They flew out of the mirror, from behind this time, and pierced the ink beasts before they reached the dome. "Pretty boy, now!" Sai screamed. As one the ink beasts raced for the small gaps between the ice mirrors. Haku had caught wind of this, however, and refocused his attention to the inside. The needles came slower, however, as the masked boy had to focus on the ink animals still coming from outside. Sasuke made to follow the animals in their charge, when an ink gorilla grabbed him. "What are you?" Sasuke started. He was cut off when Sai's voice started to come from the beast. "You are not going with them. You are meant to go up." And then the beast, with no further prompting, cocked its arm back. "Wait," Sasuke said, his voice trembling. "You couldn't possibly be the gorilla," launched Sasuke, sending him flying for a gap in the ice mirrors at the top of the dome. Surprisingly, there was no reflection in the ice mirror making up the dome's ceiling. In his flight, Sasuke could make out his pale teammate diving towards him on the bird of ink. "Pretty boy," Sai called. "My hand." Sasuke nodded. He held out his hand to take Sai's outstretched one. He was close, almost making it clear of the ice dome, when a sandaled foot kicked him in the chest, sending him careening back down to the bridge. He hit it with bone-crunching force, and for a second he could feel the wind knocked out of him. "Darn," Sai cursed. He made to fly back to the safety of the air, but ice needles pierced his bird before he could ascend. Abandoning it, Sai intended to retreat once more. Then a water bullet shot him out of the air. He fell, twisting in mid-air, before clipping an ice mirror and falling into the dome. Unlike Sasuke, Sai was able to land on his feet. Much like Sasuke, however, the boy was injured to the point he could barely move. "Sai," Sasuke grunted. He had managed to push himself to his hands and knees, but not much further. "Can you do that again? The ink things?" Sai shook his head. "It took me far too long to get even that many done. Why do you think I couldn't help you before?" Sai then frowned. "Still, as it stands, I barely have any chakra left. We're stuck." Sasuke cursed. With visible struggle he forced himself back to his feet. With another knife in his hand, he attempted to ready himself, but failed to do so. "You're dead on your feet, Uchiha," the masked person said. Once more did he have a volley of ice needles holstered in his fist. "I can see you swaying. Give up now. I will let you live." "Maybe we should take his advice," Sai whispered. Sasuke pushed the boy away. The action nearly cost him his balance, but it was worth it. "No," Sasuke grunted. "I will not give up now. I refuse to lose before I'm standing before that man again." The masked boy, in each of the mirrors, seemed to sag. It was obvious, the disappointment reflected across the many mirrors. "If that is how you choose to proceed, then you cannot begrudge me on how I choose to proceed. I will kill my heart and with it, you." The masked boy, Haku, readied his projectiles. "Please forgive me in the pure world." Sasuke, once again, closed his eyes. Sai didn't. You realize that I'm not exactly with him, correct? I am fine with giving up to live another day." Whether or not Sai was heard was inconsequential. Haku released his ice needles at the both of them. The projectiles, deadly and precise and sharp, sailed straight and true for the two downed ninjas. Sasuke had accepted his death. It was really too fortunate that another didn't. XXX Sakura heard her voice before she registered that she was screaming. It was an unconscious action, born of concern and fear for her teammates. The ice needles closed in fast around them, packed so thick that they were an almost wall of white. They would pierce and skewer then boys without fail, leaving them bloody and bruised and surely dead. Then, far off, a shockwave shook the bridge. It was a clap that threw even her off her feet. Behind her the person her team was meant to protect, a bridge builder by the name of Tazuna, cried in alarm as he held onto his bridge's railing. Then, like a divine breath of the gods, a gale swept over the bridge. It pushed away first the mist, then the hail of needles. The ice mirrors attempted to hold their form, but even they were blown away from the gale's unstoppable onslaught. The bridge, now clear of smog, showed all of its occupants. Sasuke and Sai lay on the ground further down the bridge. They were caught in the gale with nothing to hold onto, and thus were carried away. Even further down the bridge lay Haku under the debris of his own broken ice mirrors. He was very clearly knocked out. Further up the bridge Zabuza, the scary missing ninja, held onto his massively oversized cleaver. He had stabbed it into the bridge and was using it as both an anchor and a shield against the wind. It proved effective. Kakashi had done the same with his two knives. What was that? Tazuna asked. Sakura didn't know. She looked to the direction where the blow came, only to see something she hadn't seen in a very long time. Standing with a fist outstretched as if he had just thrown a punch, was a blonde-haired, orange-clad boy. Said boy slowly retracted his fist and stood in a more casual stance, before tilting his head. The boy started. Is this finally wave country? Zabuza was so close to winning. The biggest, and perhaps only, obstacle between him and his pay was on his knees before him. Kakashi Hokage, the copy ninja, could do little to escape him and his signature hidden mist. Now that the man was on the defensive, and buckled under the weight of Kubi Karabocho, all he had to do was win the war of attrition and the Leaf Ninja's life would be forfeit. As a side, his loyal weapon had the copy ninja's breaths cornered as well. Victory was all but assured for him. Soon he'd have enough to go fund his second attempt at revolution. Soon, his home village would finally be liberated and then a gust of wind, stronger than any technique he had ever felt before, blew through the area. It blew away his chakra-augmented mist as if it were simple fog and even displaced him. Thinking quickly, the mist ninja stabbed his sword into the bridge and held on for dear life. Behind him, beyond the howling gale, Zabuza heard the ice mirrors crack and the brats yelling for dear life. Hokage grunted as well, before holding true to his name and copying Zabuza by stabbing his weapon into the bridge. They were all affected, so this attack was indiscriminate. But who was so strong to attack two high-class ninjas like that? Eventually the mist completely cleared, and the gust died down accordingly. After a few seconds of calm, Zabuza endeavored to look up from his sword only to see something he wasn't expecting. It was a boy, clad in all orange and with the brightest, bluest eyes he had ever seen. His blonde hair seemed to shine more intensely than the sun, which was offset by how utterly bland and bored the boy looked. His fist was outstretched, as if he had just thrown a punch, but that was impossible. There was no way anyone could punch so hard that they created a gust of wind that strong from the effort alone. And why was there a gash in the jumpsuit's arm? XXX elsewhere the immortal Jashin priest Hidan lay completely defeated on the ground. Or rather, his head did. The rest of his body lay splattered across the ravaged remains of what used to be a clearing. Now, however, it was a destroyed pockmark spanning several miles. Hidan's head coughed, drawing power from lungs that no longer existed. How? What the fuck was that? The priest had attempted to slice into the boy. He had a quota for blood each day, damn it. That stupid little blonde boy would fulfill that quota and everything would be fine. Hidan was in such a good mood, that he might have even responded to those Akatsuki jerks. Best of all, the boy seemed to even understand the importance of his most important vigil. The little blonde bastard held out his hand at Hidan's demand of blood. Hidan had smiled viciously. Perhaps he might not kill the boy after all. It was okay to leave subjects mostly dead. So he raised his three-pronged scythe and cackled as he attempted to bisect the boy's arm. Hidan was not prepared to see his scythe shatter against the boy's arm. It had cut through the boy's jumpsuit well enough, but against his arm it faltered. What? Hidan asked, eyes wide and voice failing him. The boy, instead of being surprised, looked disappointed. He had looked to his ripped jumpsuit top and frowned. He poked and rubbed at the place where the wound should have been and seemed genuinely disappointed that there was none there. So I don't get to see my blood today. That is fine, I was busy anyway. Hidan had sputtered. He tried to talk, but the boy beat him to it. "Hey, crazy guy. Do you happen to know where the land of waves is?" Hidan didn't, but he had grunted and said that he would tell the boy if he could beat him. Seconds later, and Hidan was ahead lying in a divot. "Damn it," Hidan cursed. "It's going to be a while before I recover from this one." Akatsuki would have to wait for his reply. XXX Zabuza shrugged, then decided that it didn't matter where the rip came from. Standing up, the hidden mist rogue pulled his sword from the ground and pointed it at the young boy standing before him. "Hey, runt," Zabuza grunted. His voice was deep, and gruffy, and just slightly intimidating. It was a voice he used when confronting children that were swimming in waters far too deep for them. "Were you the one to dispel my hidden mist technique?" The boy didn't respond, instead looking at his fist. He stared at it blankly, regarding the thing as if it were the first time he had ever seen it. After staring at it for a few seconds, the blonde decided that, yes, this was in fact his own fist and let it drop back to his side. "Yes," the boy responded. He looked at Zabuza with yet another blank expression, then tilted his head as if bored. "I suppose I am." Zabuza scoffed. "The kid supposes, huh? Well, I won't lie, that was impressive. I'm not sure of what wind technique you used to do it, but you must be pretty skilled in the art in order to make a gust that strong." The boy tilted his head further. "Wind technique? I don't know any wind techniques." "Well, what do you mean?" Zabuza asked. "Then what do you call what you just did?" Naruto shrugged. "A punch?" Zabuza had enough. With the heft of his sword, the rogue ninja dashed forward, his sword held in a double grip behind him. To such an inexperienced brat's eye, Zabuza knew that he was little more than a blur. As his speed carried him over to the boy, Zabuza raised his sword to decapitate the young man. Then, something curious happened. Zabuza was on top of the boy. His sword was prepped back and his muscles were tense to swing. In less than a second, his sword would cleave through both the air and the boy's head, and he could return to eviscerating his real prey. But there is something to be said about a ninja's instincts. In the world that he lived in, Zabuza had long ago realized that attacks and threats could come from virtually anywhere. Instincts, while often irrational, have saved his life many times in his career as an official ninja and even more in his time as a rogue one. Zabuza learned to trust his instincts implicitly, to the point of almost paranoia. So when his instincts screamed at him, wailing and crying and begging him to back away from the blonde-haired boy, he did. In a move completely uncharacteristic to him, he employed every muscle in his body and every ounce of chakra that he could reasonably spare to leap backwards in a single bound. The boy seemed unaware of Zabuza's problem. He tilted his head and stared at the mist ninja with obvious confusion. "Weren't you going to cut me?" the boy asked. His voice was so lackadaisical. As if what he was asking was as common as asking for a glass of water. "I am, boy. Don't you worry about that," Zabuza responded, but he was nowhere near as calm as his voice made him seem. The hairs on the back of his neck were raised and sweat dripped down his forehead as he tried to contemplate the reason that fear had settled into his bones before he had even swung. "Why?" Zabuza asked himself. "Why does this boy frighten me so?" Across from him, Zabuza noticed that the boy had no intention to move, instead seeming to be content standing where he was. For some reason, the copy ninja behind him was doing the same. Seeing this, Zabuza took some time to look over what he was doing. He had charged the boy, and for all intents and purposes, it seemed like he was in the clear. The boy would be beheaded and he'd be able to move on. Then his instincts roared at him, and he had to back off. What was going on with that? Come to think of it, it happened right before. Right before the boy looked at him. It was a faint, almost imperceptible thing, but the boy's sky-blue eyes darted over towards his. They made eye contact, and instead of being afraid, like he was supposed to be, the boy was nonplussed. He almost seemed bored. "So, you're more than you let on," Zabuza grumbled, to which the boy tilted his head more. It was concerning how horizontal his head was. "I'm just me. I'm Naruto." Zabuza's eye twitched. "I'm going to kill you, brat." Naruto shrugged. Zabuza responded by bringing his unburdened hand into a hand seal. Hidden mist technique. XXX Kakashi stared at the rogue ninja, his Sharingan eye spinning as he took in the scene before him. Zabuza, the man that he himself was having so much trouble with, had retreated so violently from the boy's reaction. While it may have taken the mist ninja a second to realize what had happened, Kakashi and his increased perception had seen the truth immediately. Somehow Naruto had seen the man approach. Zabuza was by no means a particularly fast opponent, but he certainly wasn't a slouch. Even to him Zabuza was almost a blur as he darted across the bridge to get the jump on the blonde powerhouse. And Naruto, The little enigma had his eyes on the man the entire time. His blue orbs tracked the man as he darted back and forth across the bridge. He seemed to not care as Zabuza blurred behind him, but then, at the last second, turned to stare at the mist ninja as he brought his giant cleaver down. Naruto had looked bored. As if the entire thing was beneath him. It wasn't even a false bravado, brought upon by shock, that he had seen in so many green ninjas before. This was a genuine disinterest. Naruto looked at the attack and had genuinely seen it as ultimately harmless. So he didn't move. Sure enough, Zabuza had done it for him. So Naruto was fine. Kakashi was unsure as to the power of the child, as he was rather elusive in the village, but apparently there was nothing for him to worry about. Kakashi turned and regarded his students. Naruto could take care of himself. XXX mist started to creep in once more from the sea around the bridge. It settled in fast, quickly blanketing the bridge in a layer of fog, before growing denser and higher. Soon, the bridge was completely covered in the stuff, and vision was all but an impossibility. Naruto looked down at his fist once more, then raised a blonde eyebrow as he regarded it once more. The fox enunciated for the contemplative boy. "So your punches can produce gales of wind, huh?" The fox snorted. "Something like that took me many years to master. It seems that you learned to do it completely by accident." Naruto nodded. He looked back into the mist that surrounded him and prepared to punch it again, only for something heavy to hit him and throw him off balance. The power that he was building up was dispelled, and he staggered a bit before righting himself. Naruto hadn't noticed, but there was a new gash on his jumpsuit. "What was that?" the fox asked. He couldn't see what was going on outside, not much, but he could tell when his host was feeling that something was off. "I don't know," Naruto whispered. He reared back his arm to toss another punch, only for it to be knocked off course as well. This time the energy hadn't fully dispersed however, and the aftershock of the attack pulsed into the bridge, cracking the stone. The scattered shards spread far, one such piece piercing the mist and bouncing off of something that was nearly invisible inside of it. The nearly invisible thing had a gasp of pain, and Naruto raised an eyebrow. "Interesting," Naruto muttered. He reared back his fist once more, and when the invisible blur came in to intercept the attack, he let it knock his attack off course. Prepared this time, Naruto let his attack hit the bridge. The force of the punch shattered the stone, and sent the entire bridge groaning. The stone splintered and broke off once more. This time many more stone shards scattered in every direction, and the invisible blur was battered by the impromptu attack. Zabuza, his concentration broken, cursed as his invisibility within the mist faded. Naruto wasted no time upon seeing him, and cocked his fist back. "We can't afford to beat around the bush with this one," the fox muttered. "He intends to wear you down. While I am not sure exactly how possible that is, I'd rather not find out." Red chakra bubbled around Naruto's arm, eventually coming to coalesce around his fist. The red chakra shifted and squirmed around the boy's fist, swirling and whirring and becoming very dangerous. "Come now, Naruto." Naruto, his punch unknowingly augmented by the fox's powers, threw his attack with a minimum amount of effort. The attack flew, and while Naruto's actual punch didn't go very far, the effects of it did. The mist parted under the titanic force of the punch. The ground was cleaved as a fissure was blown into the ground. Trees were uprooted, their roots torn from the ground and left flying in the chaotic windstorm of the displaced air. The sea, not particularly hit by the attack, parted from the ambient force of the blow. And at the center of it all Zabuza's broken body fell to the ground, only barely saved from total annihilation by the now broken Kubikirabocho. "We have work to do." Serious series, serious punch. XXX Kakashi stared in abject terror at the scene before him. He had turned his back for not a minute before the mist started seeping in again. At first, the one-eyed ninja thought that the natural mist of the land had started to creep back in, but then the fog started to thicken, and before he could do anything the visibility on the bridge was back to near nothingness. "Shit," Kakashi cursed. He was now mentally kicking himself for allowing the newly minted Jonin to face off against an almost legendary ninja. Sure, Naruto was almost stronger than Guy, but that didn't mean anything. He was still green. He was still just a chill XXX Sakura, for the second time in about as many minutes, was forced to her knees. The shockwave from the side of the bridge where Naruto and Zabuza were fighting. Well. It exploded. It quite literally exploded as the mist was blown away for a second time. That wasn't the only thing blown away, however. A fissure in the ground, small where it started but expanding exponentially outwards from there, went several miles out into the woods. For quite a bit outwards from there, the carnage left debris and desolation everywhere. For anywhere inside of the fissure, There was nothing but total obliteration. Sakura, overwhelmed by the attack, could only gape at the large-scale destruction. I mean, sure, she always knew that Naruto was more powerful than they were on an amazing level. But what sort of power gap? XXX Haku had found it odd that he was knocked out by one earth-shaking attack, only to be awakened by another. Getting up slowly, Haku shook off the soreness granted by being hit with the force of a train, and wiped the melting ice shards off his kimono. He didn't have many valuable possessions. He was allowed to cherish the one expensive thing that he owned. That in mind, Haku rose gingerly to his feet. His whole body ached, but he still had to make sure that his state of dress was correct. After making sure he was of the correct attire, and ignoring the groans of the unconscious enemies behind him, Haku looked around. Only to see that his master lay, crumbled and broken, in a blast cone that spanned out so far into the mainland that he couldn't currently see an end to the destruction. Anger, despair and rage gave way to a kind of cold, quiet sensation. All thoughts fled from his mind as his body moved without any conscious effort on his part. Haku's hand reached into his expensive dress and removed the ornate needles that lay nestled in the inner breast pocket with a smooth, graceful ease. Taking less than a second to look over them, for they had never been used, Haku was soon in motion. Ice style, demonic ice mirror, Haku whispered, his voice as frosty as the ice mirror that appeared before him. It was half-formed, and even then melting in places, but it was good enough for his purposes. The masked ninja took a single, sure step inside of it, and then aimed himself at the person standing at the apex of the blast. At the odd, blonde-haired orange-wearing boy. The man that was fighting her master, the copy ninja if Haku remembered correctly, saw what he was doing and tried to stop him. The man deserved his renown, because he actually made it pretty far before Haku went flying out of his ice mirror. No matter how fast the Jonin was, however, meant little once Haku got moving. As soon as Haku stepped out of his mirror, time seemed to slow down. The world tinted itself blue, and it was like life itself was frozen. The copy ninja, his hand outstretched and single red eye opened wide, seemed to freeze in midair as he reached for Haku's mirror. Haku was far past his position now. The pink-haired girl, the useless one, seemed startled by her master's outburst. She was slower on the uptake, though, and only managed to turn partway to see what was going on. Haku was past her as well, frozen in a state of confusion as she was. Haku noted that their target, the bridge builder Tazuna, was frozen in time as well without a single means of protection. He could kill him right now, and no one would be the wiser. The needles in his hand were for a specific person, however, so he let free one made of ice. As soon as it left his hand, however, it too slowed to a crawl. It would reach its target eventually. Finally, Haku zoned in on the object of his newly established hatred. The blonde fool, so simple and stupid and foolish, just stood there, fist outstretched, as if what he had just done wasn't the highest form of crime. This stupid, idiotic child would pay for its miraculous murder of his master with blood, and it would do so by the weapon that Haku's master had gifted him. With a swing of his arm, Haku swung the needles clenched between his fingers towards the neck of the soon-to-be-dead blonde. The very first lesson that Master Zabuza had taught him was that no one, bar none, had a strong neck when they were unguarded. This child would be the same. The needles, sharp and ornate with engravings of dragons and lions, inched their way closer and closer to the boy's neck. Haku could almost taste his victory. Then something peculiar happened. Haku, the last member of the Yuki clan, got his speed from judicious use of his bloodline limit. Using his ice, Haku was able to almost freeze time and move at ridiculous speeds. While like this, Haku's perception of the world around him was special, and he saw everything as if it were frozen in his ice. Birds seemed to be stuck in midair on their flight, dew would be eternally falling from the petals of a flower, and even the mist from his master's technique would be suspended in place. To offset this speed, however, Haku too would have to be moving extremely slowly, at least to his own perception, lest he be out of control every time he used it. To the masked teenager, he was moving as slow as a civilian through sap, even though consciously he knew that he was moving near the speed of light. Regardless, Haku was currently moving at speeds the human brain couldn't possibly comprehend. The Sharingan, a cheat of an ability even in the ninja world, could only barely keep up with him, and it was for this reason that Haku was certain that he would be fine in his endeavor. So you can imagine his surprise when the boy, the blue-eyed boy that definitely did not have a Sharingan, turned, in real time, to look at him. "What are you doing?" the boy asked, again, in real time. Haku's mind boggled at the logistics of it. In order to do such a thing with his perception, The boy would have to have been speaking at speeds greater than light. Haku tried to respond, but even he couldn't get his words out quick enough. The boy didn't seem to particularly mind, though. He just shrugged his shoulders. Then he walked around the still airborne Haku. "Did you throw that ice needle?" the boy asked. He was somewhere behind Haku now. Haku couldn't turn to face him fast enough. In fact, his arm was still swinging for neck that was no longer there. "I can't have that. It might hit Sakura, and I'm told that she's funny." There was a small clink sound that Haku knew from years of experience to be the breaking of ice. His attack was thwarted, and wait, how could he hear the ice break when he was traveling faster than sound? How could he hear the boy speak? Even sound was too slow for him right now, and yet the boy was talking as if everything was normal. What was going on? Amidst Haku's confusion, the blond boy walked back over to where Haku was swinging and placed himself back in the path of Haku's arm. He tilted his neck so that the needles would be able to pierce it better, and then waited. "I hope for your sake that actually works," the blonde said. "I haven't seen my blood in a while, and that might be the only thing that amuses me enough to spare your life." Haku, who was used to the overwhelming bloodthirst of his master, felt his own mortality. "XXX, so we're not talking about it?" Sasuke asked. They were currently sitting around a table in the bridge builder's house. Dazuna's daughter, Tsunami, had made them all breakfast and they were eating it rather sedately. "No, we're not," Kakashi replied. He picked up a piece of meat from the communal plate at the center of the table and laid it on top of his rice. "But I really think we should. Did you see what happened out there?" Naruto punched. "We're not talking about it, Sasuke." Kakashi wasn't having any of that, so the table went to silence once more. A few moments passed like this, before Sasuke couldn't take it anymore. But he broke the woods. "I know that we could at least say something about no." Surprisingly, it was Sakura who spoke up about that. "We're not saying anything about it. Anything at all." But Sasuke started. He was cut off by a surprisingly powerful fist grasping his collar. Before he knew it, he was eye to eye with the unfocused green eyes of his female teammate. "Sasuke, I know that you were unconscious for most of it, so let me fill you in. I have seen many an insane thing since I was put on this team. I have seen a man eat with a mask on and everyone looking at him, yet no one seeing his face." Kakashi grunted. Infuriatingly, his food was finished. "I have seen a boy somehow display every single innate, human emotion incorrectly." Sai smiled. Something about it was off. No one could tell what, though, and that was the problem. "I have seen someone prettier than I am be male." Haku, who was tied up in a corner of the house, grunted. "Boys can be pretty too." Sakura shot him a withering glare. The boy shut up. The pinkette found his reaction satisfying and turned back to her teammate. "I have seen many a mind-boggling thing, and yet I'd still come out sane. What happened on that bridge today breaks even my suspension of disbelief, and as such, I need some time to cope. You will give me that, or so help me, I will make you wish that you were in that crater when it exploded." Sasuke, smartly, shut up once more, and the room devolved back into silence once again. There was a scream of pain outside. "Can you guys just tell me why we're letting Naruto deal with Gato and his men, then?" Sasuke asked. There was a collective shrug, and it was actually the bridge builder's grandson, a boy by the name of Inari, who responded. "Well, we were prepared to fight them, me and the other townsfolk, but your friend just got this look on his face when he saw them and ran off. He said something about finally finding bandits and real adventure and barreled right into them." Inari then looked down at his food. He picked at it a bit before continuing. "After seeing the blast area, none of us had it in us to stop him." There was another scream outside. Seeing as the team had left Naruto at the bridge, which was several miles away from where they currently were, this was impressive. "Unless, of course, you feel like telling him to stop." Sasuke, and the rest of the people at the table, decided to leave Gato's thugs to Naruto. The 4 members of Team 7 moved in relative silence through the forest. Kakashi, of course, was taking point, making sure to keep his normal eye open and alert, in turn keeping so that there were no untoward threats to harm the rest of his team. Not like there was anything even remotely foolhardy enough to attack them as they were now. "Naruto," Sakura said, her voice being barely a whisper. "How far does this crater go?" The blonde-haired boy shrugged. He shifted the package he had on his back, before keeping pace. Sakura, long used to the quiet boy by now, nodded her head. She stared ahead, keeping her green eyes on the horizon. "I'm not going to question it. I'm just going to walk, and I refuse to do anything else until I get home and have a long nap." The group then continued to walk in silence. all while skirting along the edge of the crater that Naruto had made in his fight with Zabuza. It coincidentally ran along most of their path back to the Hidden Leaf Village. Behind Kakashi was Naruto, walking without a care in the world. Behind even him was the 3 official members of Team 7. They were rather quiet for the trip. "This is much farther than I thought." Sakura's hand lashed out. She held a finger to Sasuke's lips and prevented him from talking. "I am walking, Sasuke. I refuse to do anything else until I get home and have a long nap." Sasuke nodded. X It wasn't long until Team 7 returned to the village. Getting through the gates was somewhat harder, what with Naruto's package, but overall the process was simple. Sakura quickly outpaced her team. She turned immediately and regarded the boys. "Not that I didn't have an immense amount of fun on our first mission outside of the village, but I'm going to be spending some time alone with my family." Sasuke raised an eyebrow, while Naruto tilted his head. They were confused but decided that discretion would be the better road to take. "You take whatever time you need," Kakashi said. He turned to the other members of his squad. "Let's go, boys." Kakashi set off, and the other 2 boys followed him. Sai, however, stayed behind. He stared at Sakura for a moment, before smiling. "Are you taking time off in order to get away from the oddity that is our team?" Sakura sighed. Sai just had to be the one to bring up what everyone else seemed to implicitly get. She pinched the bridge of her nose in order to stave off the coming headache. "Got it in one, ace." X the 3rd Hokage was a worldly old man. He had knowledge and wisdom beyond even his impressive years and had likely forgotten more than most people would ever know. As such, he was a man who would quickly notice trends, and react accordingly. A trend that he had recently noticed was that Naruto tended to do things that would boggle minds. "Naruto," the Hokage started. His question was on the tip of his tongue, but one look at the blonde's blank face told him all that he needed to know on how that question was going to be answered. Instead, he directed the question to another. "Kakashi, why is there a young man tied up and strapped to Naruto's back?" Kakashi, who was doing his best to ignore the situation, tore his attention away from his book. "That's his package," Kakashi answered, as if what he said was as commonplace as the weather. "And why does he have such a package?" the Hokage asked. Kakashi shrugged. This time he did not look away from the book. He said that he wanted it. "I couldn't find it in me to say no." The Hokage was at a loss for words. "You were his Jonin commander. You had operational authority. To be fair, Lord Hokage, no one ever told me that." "He's a Jonin," the Hokage stressed. "And a child to boot. Why would you ever assume that he would have any sort of equal status to yourself?" In response, Kakashi's eye trailed over to the blonde kid. He stood motionless and quiet in the middle of the room and did not speak unless addressed. "I remembered what happened to Guy." The Hokage couldn't bring himself to argue that point. "Regardless, what's happening here is an extreme violation of protocol. We do not let random individuals into the village without going through the proper regulations. And we definitely do not kidnap them without reason." The Hokage rubbed at his temple. "How did you even get him past the gate?" It was Sasuke's turn to speak up. Naruto spoke to them. The Hokage's old, tired eyes darted to the last Uchiha. "And what exactly did he say?" "If I remember correctly," Sasuke started, "he said that this is his package, and he wanted to keep it, sir." The Hokage turned back to Kakashi. "And that worked?" Kakashi nodded. "The guards couldn't find it in themselves to stop him." The Hokage rolled his eyes. As usual, it appeared that he would have to take matters into his own hands. "Naruto," the old man started. "You can't just kidnap people." Naruto, his face once again blank, just shrugged. "I didn't kidnap him. He's my package." Haku, tied and gagged on the blonde's back, tried to talk, but the bandages in his mouth made that a difficult endeavor. The 3rd Hokage just sighed. "You can't make random people into your package. That's very frowned upon." Naruto tilted his head. "But why? He tried to kill me, so he's an enemy." "He what now?" "Haku was an enemy ninja." The Hokage turned on Kakashi. "You let him bring an enemy shinobi into the village?" Kakashi, finally fed up with the questioning, closed his book. "If you can take the boy from him, then by all means, punish me." The Hokage looked back at Naruto. The blonde was clutching the enemy shinobi to his chest now, almost like a teddy bear. Said enemy shinobi looked only a little perturbed. The Hokage sighed. "I'll summon Guy." X Sasuke rubbed his eyes as he exited the Hokage tower. Faintly, in the distance, he could hear the cries of youth as Guy tried to overcome the monster that was Uzumaki Naruto. "Come, young Naruto. I have been training hard for our rematch. Gate of Wonder, open." Sasuke braced himself as an earthquake bled through the local area. A supersonic boom then rang out, signaling the clash between the Green Beast and Naruto. The two were likely far away, but even now Sasuke could imagine Naruto's face. The boy would be bored, incredibly so, as he humored one of the few people to ever even slightly push him. With a sigh, Sasuke returned to his feet and set off to his home. Ever since the massacre of his clan by his now estranged brother, he was living in an apartment complex. "I was useless," the last Uchiha grumbled. His fists clenched at his sides, and he could already feel his nails making indents in his palms. "I thought that I was getting stronger. But I'm not. That package made me look stupid. He made me look weak." Sasuke then looked up. In the air, over the skies of the Hidden Leaf Village, shockwaves rang out from invisible clashes. Naruto and Guy were moving too fast to see. Sasuke squinted, then activated his Sharingan, only to be able to see the barest of blurs. There. So fast. Sasuke gaped. Directly above him, Naruto and Guy exchanged a particularly strong blow, and the two recoiled from the force of their strikes. Stuck mid-air from the momentum, Sasuke could now see the unapologetic grin on Guy's face as he reveled in the action. "Young Naruto. Our honorable Lord Hokage has asked me to bring you in, and I shall," Guy yelled. Even though he was so very far above the kingdom, his voice was loud enough to be heard throughout. Naruto didn't respond. He adjusted a very much unconscious Haku on his back, before repositioning himself. Once they had recovered, the two superhumans kicked the air and were little more than blurs once more. Sasuke clenched his teeth. This was the level of power he needed to reach, at a minimum, in order to avenge his clan. With a deep breath, the young Uchiha deactivated his Sharingan. He needed to be better, and he had an idea where he would need to start. "XXX honey, are you alright?" Sakura's mom, Mebuki, asked. Her daughter had returned home not 5 hours ago, and all she had done since then was lie her head down on the kitchen counter. "I'm fine, Mom," Sakura answered. Her voice was muffled by both her arms and the wood of the counter. "I just have a really bad headache," Mebuki hummed. Turning her attention back to the dishes, she attempted to finish the house chores. Sakura wasn't around to do them anymore now that she was busy with ninja stuff. Mebuki knew nothing about it, so she decided to let Sakura rest. That she was resting for so long was worrying. "Are you sure that it's just a headache, dear?" Mebuki had had some terrible headaches in her days. They were especially horrible around certain times of the month. Nothing was this serious, though. Sakura hadn't even said a word until just now. Her daughter sighed. Finally, she lifted her head from the table to stare at her mom. Mebuki almost gasped when she saw her daughter's eyes. The normally vibrant green orbs were blank, almost desolate. "Mom. What's the oddest thing that you have ever seen?" Mebuki wanted to respond with the fact that her daughter had naturally bright pink hair despite the fact that neither her nor her husband did, but decided not to. Sakura continued anyway. "Have you ever seen someone punch a fissure into the ground?" Mebuki hesitated. That wasn't something that was normal? The things that ninjas did or could do was certainly never normal. "I'm pretty sure that Mistress Tsunade of the Sannin could do such a thing." No, Sakura said, her head hurting all the more for reliving the event. "Not punching the ground. He didn't do that. He punched at the air, and the force behind it was so strong that the ground was affected. Have you ever seen that?" Mebuki, the smart and scientifically gifted woman that she was, frowned. "That's impossible, dear. The logic behind how much force that would need is staggering. The person throwing the punch would quite literally be evaporated under the energy and heat required to throw it." Finally Mebuki got a response out of her daughter as Sakura threw her hands in the air. "I know. That's what I said. And yet that's what happened. He punched at a person and destroyed the landscape. For miles. It doesn't make any sense." Mebuki blanched. "For miles? That's impossible." Mebuki made her way over to her daughter. She placed a hand on Sakura's forehead. It was as warm as she suspected. "You have a fever, honey. I'm sure that's the problem." Sakura batted her mother's hand away. Her face scrunched up as she scowled at the woman she thought was the person she was closest to. All too suddenly Sakura was realizing that her mother, the woman who used to be her bastion of support, was quickly becoming anything but. Mebuki still loved her, and wanted what was best for her, of that she was sure. But Sakura could no longer come to her with all of her issues anymore. Sakura was a ninja now, and what was quickly becoming a normal thing to her was a fantastical thing heard of only in legends to her mother. "No, Mom," Sakura started. Her voice was a little shaky, but she hoped that she was controlling it well enough that her mother hadn't noticed. Mebuki already looked scandalized from Sakura's actions. "I think that I might just be a little tired, is all. Is my room clean?" Mebuki looked concerned, and just the slightest bit confused. Regardless, she nodded her head and turned. "Mostly," she responded. "I hadn't had the chance to change your bedsheets as of yet. Can you wait here until I do?" "Sure," Sakura said. She tried smiling, but it was at best a weary thing. "I'll just rest here until you're done." Mebuki smiled back. It, too, wasn't one of her best, but at the very least it seemed like Sakura's mom was appreciative of the gesture. Ever since Sakura started going to the academy, she was becoming more and more independent. Cleaning Sakura's room was one of the few things that Mebuki could do for her daughter, and Sakura was determined to let her do it. "I'll be right back," Mebuki said. With a quick shake of her hands, the housewife dried herself and made off to prepare her daughter's room for her. Sakura smiled at her until she was effectively out of sight. Then she collapsed, her energy leaving her. She would drag herself back up from the counter when she heard her mom coming, but for now she would rest. "Even Mom doesn't believe me." Sakura then sighed. In front of her was a plate of toast and eggs that her mother had prepared for her. Team 7 had returned to the village quite early and had therefore been just in time for breakfast. Sakura hadn't touched it, not even once. "Maybe I should just start training more," Sakura mumbled. She buried her face in her folded arms. "Naruto and Sasuke and the rest of them are also much stronger than me. Maybe if I'm stronger, then they'll be forced to believe me. I bet Ino wouldn't be having this much trouble. I bet Ino would be." Sakura's voice faded out as her headache worsened. Her eyes drooped, and she slowly fell asleep. She lied there, dozing and calm, until suddenly she twitched. Thinking nothing of it, Sakura let herself fall back to sleep. In front of her, her eggs levitated just slightly off the counter. Triple-X Sky collapsed, his chest heaving as he tried to catch his breath. Sweat dripped down his face like waterfalls, and his eyes drooped every so often. But in his clutches was the package that his Hokage asked him to get. Guy's smile couldn't be wider. "Young Naruto. I have done it. This game is mine." Naruto, upon hearing Guy, turned and stared at the man. Then he reached for his back and seemed genuinely confused that Haku was no longer there. The boy then glared at Guy, the action a rare moment of real emotion from him. Naruto pointed, his finger acting as both an accusation and a death toll. With a voice as calm as a lake and as deadly as a guillotine he spoke. "Mine." Guy recoiled. For reasons he could not comprehend, he felt as if a rope was tightening around his neck. "Young Naruto, are you?" Guy didn't finish the statement before Naruto was on top of him. Triple-X Hyuga wasn't a man that was easily surprised. After becoming the head of his clan at 21, the earliest of any clan head in Hyuga history, he was used to the unusual. He had become quite adept at parsing the extraordinary from the asinine and was as such deemed as one of the most capable leaders his clan had ever produced. And then Uzumaki Naruto decided to go from brash and annoying to silent and powerful during a single year. Hiyashi had heard rumors of him overpowering Might Guy, a man that even he had to admit was strong. It was said that before Naruto even left the academy he was causing untold destruction. Hiyashi, of course, believed none of this. He was a pragmatic, skeptical man by reputation. It was a reputation well deserved, and thus while everyone else was obviously in awe of the earth-rending, air-tearing catastrophe of a fight that was currently happening over the village between Guy and what was supposed to be Naruto, Hiyashi was sipping his tea and looking over his clan's financial records. His silent denial was as strong as his taijutsu. It was during his most recent denial, the 34th random earthquake to shake the village that day, that a knock came to his door. Hiyashi grunted, a sound that, although low, cut through the silence of his study like a knife. The door opened, his servants knowing his mannerisms, and in stepped a member of the branch clan of the Hyuga. The Hyuga clan member bowed deeply at the waist upon entering. "Lord Hiyashi, I apologize for disturbing you, but you have a visitor." Hiyashi raised an eyebrow, but otherwise kept his face completely passive. "And you allowed him entry? Is it the Hokage?" The branch member, to his credit, didn't quake under his leader's annoyance. He simply swallowed his trepidation and continued. Hiyashi was proud. That was how a true Hyuga should be. "It is not. But I figured that it was still a person of interest. I would never disturb you for anything else." Hiyashi let his surprise wash over him. This particular branch member was the most trusted of his attendants. His talents were quite honestly wasted in the lesser half of the clan, but that was the circumstances of one's birth. Regardless, he was still quite talented, and had a judgment process similar to Hiyashi himself. Therefore Hiyashi trusted that whoever this person was would probably be at the very least entertaining. "Who is it, then?" Hiyashi asked. The man, recognizing the acceptance, allowed himself to straighten. "It is the last of the Uchiha. Sasuke Uchiha, my lord." This time Hiyashi let his surprise show in the ever-so-slight raise of both of his eyebrows. Now that was interesting. "You may let him enter." The branch member bowed once more and let himself out. Hiyashi had just enough time to put away his paperwork before another knock rapped on his door. This time Hiyashi called out that it was okay to enter. Sasuke Uchiha stalked into the room like a shadow, and instantly Hiyashi was on guard. This didn't feel like a child he was dealing with. This felt like a seasoned politician. His eyes were sharp, too sharp, and Hiyashi knew that he was a man on a mission. Sasuke sat at Hiyashi's table opposite him. There was no pomp or ceremony in his actions, only a calm efficiency. "Lord Hyuga," the boy said. 2 simple words, and yet so calculated. The boy was letting Hiyashi, as was correct as he was in the Hyuga's house, start the conversation. "Uchiha," Hiyashi responded, acknowledging the boy before him. Well, he shouldn't refer to him as a boy. He was a ninja now, despite being the lowest tier. The boy was expected to be able to kill, and thus was an adult. "What brings you to my residence?" The young man seemed to be contemplating what to say, but Hiyashi had to give him props for not breaking eye contact. The silence stretched on for a couple seconds more, Hiyashi calmly weathering the social faux pas. Just before it reached a critical point, however, another freak earthquake rumbled through the village. Hiyashi calmly ignored it with another sip of tea. The Uchiha did not. "There, that," Sasuke said. He pointed up, towards the ceiling, but Hiyashi knew that he was referring to what was happening outside. "Currently my teammate is outside fighting off one of the strongest people I have ever seen." "Your teammate?" Hiyashi asked. It was common knowledge who inherited the very cursed role of the new Team 7. On one hand Hiyashi was upset because Team 7's notorious reputation as being bad luck made it hard to play coy. On another hand Hiyashi was happy that he was one more generation away from the bad luck that being on that team afforded. Being Minato's teammate was never a boring time. It was also rarely a painless time. The look on the young Uchiha's face made it clear that he was annoyed at Hiyashi's game. Regardless, he barely let that irritation show on his face. Instead he huffed and continued as if he believed Hiyashi's words. "Naruto Uzumaki. He's above the village fighting guy." It was around now that the branch attendant returned. In his hands he held a silver platter with an ornate tea set perched on top. Hiyashi noticed that it wasn't quite the tea set they brought out when important guests, such as Fire Country nobility, visited, but it still wasn't the worst of what they had. That the attendant even deigned to bring any spoke volumes. Maybe this was more important than he thought. Sasuke accepted the tea in stride, and sipped quietly while the branch member refilled Hiyashi's cup. They let the silence reign while they enjoyed the tea. After a few minutes Hiyashi decided to continue the conversation. "Yes, I have heard that Guy has moved on to combating a certain ninja. What does that have to do with the nature of your visit, if I may ask?" Sasuke placed his teacup, emptied but not drained, on the associated platter. "Do you know the nature of our previous mission?" Hiyashi shook his head. "No, I wouldn't know the nature of a random Jonin team's mission." Hiyashi knew exactly what happened on that mission. Team 7's first mission out of the village was almost always a point of discussion. Hiyashi remembered his first mission out of the village. The less could be said about it the better. Sasuke continued on, ignoring the look on Hiyashi's face. It was one of extreme discomfort. "We came across the demon of the hidden mist. Zabuza Momochi was our enemy. And quite a formidable enemy, indeed." Hiyashi was uncertain of even his own ability to overcome such an opponent. With practiced grace, Hiyashi turned to sip from his tea once more. "Incredible. Seeing as how you're here I can assume that you all overcame him? Kakashi has proven his ability once more. Kakashi wasn't the one to beat him. It was Naruto." Hiyashi glided over that comment like a professional ice skater. "And you managed to defeat his apprentice, no?" Sasuke's eyes narrowed. "For someone who didn't know about the mission, it's amazing that you know about Zabuza's apprentice when I hadn't even brought him up." Hiyashi didn't deign to acknowledge that statement. Sasuke continued. "But no, I hadn't done that either. It was Naruto who beat him as well." Hiyashi, who was desperately trying to hang on to his sanity, gently placed his cup down and reached for the tea kettle. "Look, Lord Hyuga, the simple matter is that Naruto is strong. He's stronger than most anyone I know. He's even stronger than our sensei, though Kakashi won't admit it. Right now he's outside sparring Guy to a standstill and he probably isn't even going to be tired for it. He's stronger than me, then Guy and probably even Kakashi. He has pure strength that rivals even a Hokage, and maybe. Sasuke trailed off. He looked as if the next words would truly pain him to even say. He might even be strong enough to beat Itachi. Hiashi was truly surprised, for once. As long as he'd known the Uchiha, they were never able to admit inferiority. And what does that have to do with me, Uchiha? Sasuke, his eyes downcast, brought his gaze up to meet the Hyuga leader. His onyx eyes turned red and, reflexively, veins appeared around Hiyashi's. The two mighty Jujutsu users stared each other down, both tense as they awaited the other's move. I can never overpower Naruto in pure strength. I know that now, after seeing him punch a hole into the countryside. Hiyashi's eye twitched. I can grow stronger, more and more with no end in sight, but no matter what I do I can never grow stronger than that monstrosity out there. But where I cannot outpace him in power, perhaps I can in skill. Sasuke then looked at Hiyashi. He deactivated his Sharingan. There is no one more proficient in skill in the village than you. You'll be my teacher in skill and martial arts. With your teaching I can outpace Naruto, and with that, my treacherous brother. And why should I teach you? Hiyashi asked. You have given me no reason to believe in you. The Hyuga techniques are a closely guarded secret, taught only to the members of our clan. Even if I were to teach you, it would only be a shadow of its true potential. The gentle fist can only be properly used alongside the Byakugan. Sasuke smirked. I believe my Sharingan can make up for the loss. Hiyashi frowned. I refuse. And in doing so you lose the chance to prove to the entire village the superiority of the gentle fist style. Hiyashi frowned harder. Continue. Sasuke, seeing his chance, leaned forward. His grin was predatory, very thin and showing far too many teeth. Everyone already knows that the gentle fist is the best taijutsu style in Konoha. What they think they know is that the gentle fist is from the efforts of the Byakugan. They think it is a style that is solely based on a very specific bloodline. A cheat ability, if you will. Hiyashi huffed. And would they be wrong? It is a fighting style made for the Hyuga, by the Hyuga. If there was a more focused fighting style, I haven't heard of it. Why should I care what others think of my family's ability? However specialized it is, it works. Well, yes, Sasuke acceded. My apologies then, Lord Hiyashi. I had come here expecting a man of ambition. If you are content with where you are, then I see no need to continue this conversation. Sasuke then rose. By your leave. Hiyashi scowled. Sit, Uchiha. What do you mean? Sasuke stopped moving but didn't quite sit. I mean that the Uchiha are on the rise again. Right now, it is just me, but in the future, after I've surely beaten Itachi, it will be much more than just me. I will have an entire clan again, strong and serving Konoha, and we will all be in debt to you. Right now, Lord Hyuga, you are sitting on the precipice of history. This could be the moment where two of the greatest clans of Konoha join hands to achieve a taijutsu style beyond what the world has ever seen. Or it could be a lost opportunity. The choice lies with you. Hiyashi's eyes narrowed, though he did contemplate the thought. He couldn't allow the Hyuga techniques to fall into the hands of another clan, but it wasn't like there weren't emulators of it already. Like he said, the Hyuga fighting style had always been a tradition of the clan, and as such was barely changing. It was around for generations. There were bound to be those that both attempted to copy and counter it, with limited success. This, however? This would be a tradition-breaking, near unheard-of precedence. Hiyashi would be agreeing to outright teach this outsider the strengths, and thereby weaknesses, of his clan's primary means of combat. It was a dangerous, even risky move. But it was one that held merit. And if I do choose to help you, what do I gain? Sasuke smiled. You were around far longer than I, Lord Hiyashi. You have probably seen the Uchiha in action. We have a fighting style as well. Hiyashi allowed a smirk to cross his features. The boy was interesting. It is a fighting style of trickery and thievery. You steal the techniques of your opponent mid-battle and use it against them. Effective, but underhanded, and hardly something that we can use. We do not have the capabilities of the copy wheel. True, but there is more to it than just that. We do copy the techniques of our enemies, but no castle stands without a firm foundation. You can't stand against an enemy with no leg to fight on. Oh? Hiyashi asked. And what fighting style do you purport this to be? To this, Sasuke retrieved a scroll from his pocket. It bore the Uchiha crest on it. He placed it on the table and slid it over to the Hyuga Lord. I transcribed the most basic katas from the Uchiha Interceptor style taijutsu. You may keep that. Call it a gesture of good faith. Hiyashi wasted no time in opening and looking over the scroll. Like Sasuke said, it was nothing but the most basic of forms, but what it did show told enough. So it is a style of evading and redirecting attacks, Hiyashi started. He rolled the scroll up and put it to the side. I'm assuming so that you can survive long enough pick apart the enemy's fighting style. Yes, Sasuke confirmed. But it is also so I can pick apart the enemy. It is a strong, mostly defensive style that allows an Uchiha to make use of our genjutsu and ninjutsu more effectively. Admittedly, we Uchiha are comparatively weak in taijutsu, however small that comparison is. If I want to overcome Naruto, however. An explosion ripped through the skies of the Hidden Leaf Village. Wind chimes located just outside the window of Hiyashi's study rattled violently. Hiyashi steadfastly ignored it. Sasuke did not. I can't be weak in any way. Hiyashi hummed. He sipped from his tea. I see, but that all fails to mention how this style would help me. The Hyuga do well enough dodging and punishing attacks. I might even say better. How does your style benefit my own? In the simpler aspects, Lord Hyuga. Oh? Imagine this, Sasuke started. You are fighting multiple opponents, some are armed and some are attacking in the back with ninjutsu and weapons. This is a difficult situation for you, is it not? Hiyashi nodded, deciding not to bring up the heavenly rotation. Imagine if you had the interceptor style. You could use the Hyuga's smooth and fluid movements with the Uchiha's direct and disarming specifics to not only dodge the attacks, but turn their own against them. You combine the fluidity of one style with the precise, striking deadliness of the other. Not bad, no? Hiyashi nodded. Your words have merit, young man. Sasuke felt his hopes rise. But you haven't sold me. Sasuke frowned. He opened his mouth, ready to argue more, when Hiyashi held up a hand. But you have intrigued me. At the very least, you have impressed me with your diplomacy. Hiyashi then reached for the Uchiha scroll. He held it aloft in one hand. At the very least, I owe you for your good faith. I will help you incorporate at least this much of our style into yours, while you teach some of yours to ours. Depending on how well it goes, we will proceed from there. That is fair, is it not? Sasuke, once more finding hope in a lost situation, smiled. His professional exterior broke for the first time that meeting, and Hiyashi found himself grinning, just a little, at the unabashed childish glee that shone through on the young man's face. Sasuke schooled his features as best he could before responding. Yes, Lord Hyuga. That is more than fair. The Uchiha then rose from his seat. We can cover the specifics of our meeting at a later date. It is getting rather late, and I suppose that you want your rest. Hiyashi nodded, amused at what he now realized was the young man's utmost best at professionalism. He watched as the Uchiha made his way to the door, before calling out. Uchiha, Hiyashi said. One last question. What do you intend to call this style? Sasuke raised an eyebrow. I didn't assume that you would let the naming of our fused style fall to me. Humor me. Sasuke, obviously not expecting this, hummed. He turned, having been facing the door, and said. For now, how about we call it the Flowing Water Rock Smashing Fist? Triple X guy collapsed just outside the Hokage Tower. Haku, somehow still bound despite the supersonic clash he just survived, fell out of the green beast's tired, limp hands. He was immediately picked up by a nonplussed Naruto. Mine. Upstairs, looking out the window of the tower, the third Hokage sighed deeply. That's it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on my other social media accounts. Anime God here, and I'm signing off.